Her husband's mind slowly broke. Then he turned dangerous. One of the scariest things imaginable is watching someone you love slowly stop acting like themselves, not because they're angry, not because the relationship failed, but because it feels like their brain is turning against them, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. This woman was 30 years old, married, with 2 young children, and according to her, her husband used to be completely normal. He worked, spent time with the kids, joked around with her, helped around the house, just a regular husband and father. Then, over the span of a couple months, his behavior started changing in ways she couldn't explain. At first, it was easy to brush off. Weird comments, random suspicion, conversations that suddenly stopped making sense. He became obsessed with an old email account he claimed contained information about family inheritance money. According to him, someone hacked the account years ago and was secretly hiding money from him. The problem was, he hadn't touched that email in over a decade. Then things started getting darker. He became convinced that people were secretly talking about him constantly. Friends, co-workers, family members, even random strangers. And in his mind, all these people were somehow connected together, like there was some giant hidden plot happening around him that everyone else understood except him. At one point, he started accusing his wife of secretly taking phone calls about him behind his back. He'd ask her bizarre questions like, "How much are they paying you?" Or, "When are you finally going to tell me the truth?" And no matter how calmly she denied it, he became more convinced she was lying. That's the terrifying thing about delusions, to the person experiencing them. They feel completely real. You can't logic someone out of a reality their brain fully believes exists. Meanwhile, his real life started collapsing around him. He stopped going to work regularly. Instead of showing up for shifts, he kept going to police stations, apparently trying to report that people were plotting against him. Eventually, his workplace became so uncomfortable they actually called in a wellness check on him. And even during that interaction, he insisted he wasn't the problem, that everyone else was out to get him. At home, his moods became completely unpredictable. Some days, he screamed at her, demanding answers about imaginary situations. Other days, he barely acknowledged her or the kids existed. And according to her, that emotional distance hurt almost as much as the aggression, because it felt like the person she married was slowly disappearing in front of her. Then one afternoon, they took the kids to a nearby playground. At first, things felt tense, but manageable. He mostly ignored everyone while the kids played. Then sadly, he picked up a football and launched it directly toward her head. It barely missed. When she reacted, his response immediately chilled her. "If I wanted to hit you, I would have." And honestly, that's one of those moments where your instincts start screaming at you that something is seriously wrong. Later that same day, she decided to leave the house for coffee, just to calm down for a bit. She wanted to take the kids with her, but her husband insisted on coming to. The second they got into the car, he started spiraling again. He accused her of lying to him, started ranting about hidden secrets, people watching him, people talking about him. Then the yelling started. He screamed at her while she was driving, told her to shut up, demanded she admit the truth. At one point, she finally pulled over and demanded he get out of the car. Instead, he raised his fist toward her face, like he was about to punch her. Then stopped just inches away. She immediately started crying and begging him to leave. That's when he said something she would never forget for the rest of her life. When she threatened to drive him to the police station, he told her he would choke her unconscious before they got there. And the most heartbreaking part, their children were sitting in the back seat, hearing all of it happen. That night, she made an anonymous Reddit post asking for help. Because deep down, she already knew she wasn't safe anymore. Over the next few days, she secretly started recording conversations whenever he entered the room. Eventually, she captured him, threatening to slap and hurt her on audio. Then things escalated again while he was driving her to work during another paranoid rant. He suddenly grabbed the back of her neck and physically yanked her closer to him while yelling. That was the moment reality finally hit her completely. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a rough patch in the marriage. She was genuinely in danger. The second she got to work, she told her boss everything. Honestly, her boss may have saved her life. Because instead of downplaying it, her boss canceled appointments for the day and drove her directly to the police station, Chunk 57. She filed reports, handed over recordings, and explained everything happening inside the house. Chunk 58. Police eventually arrested him and placed him under a psychiatric evaluation. And surprisingly, after receiving treatment, he actually seemed to improve. Medication, hospital treatment, therapy for several months. She said he started acting like himself again. Ayudad, agoodpartner.com. Present? Which honestly makes the story even sadder, because for a while, it really looked like maybe things could recover. But eventually, he stopped taking the medication. And once the psychosis returned, everything completely fell apart again. This Chimi, he actually tried to strangle her. After that, he was permanently removed from the home, and a protection order was placed for her and the children. And honestly, the scariest part of this entire story is realizing how quickly untreated mental illness can turn someone dangerous. Because according to her, the man she originally married really did exist once. But by the end, it felt like he was completely gone.
She wanted me to learn violin for her wedding. I've never played. Most people get asked normal things when they're invited to a wedding. Be a bridesmaid. Help with decorations. Maybe give a speech. This woman got asked to do something slightly different. Her classmate demanded she learn violin from scratch, so she could perform a complicated live concerto at the wedding. And before you ask, no, she did not know how to play violin. In fact, she had literally never touched one before in her life. She was a 23-year-old college student who had known this girl for around 2 years through university classes. They weren't best friends either. More like school friends, project partners, people who talked during lectures. So when the girl invited her out for lunch and asked if she wanted to be part of the wedding, she assumed she meant bridesmaid. Completely reasonable assumption. Instead, the conversation took an absolutely insane turn. The bride started talking about a dream she supposedly had, about her perfect wedding. Not just a normal dream either. According to her, this was basically divine inspiration. She described waking up crying, because the vision was too beautiful. Then she started explaining that the wedding wasn't just a ceremony anymore. It was art. A spiritual experience. A once-in-a-lifetime masterpiece of love that every guest would emotionally remember forever. And honestly, at this point, the storyteller already felt uncomfortable because the bride wasn't just excited. She sounded feverish, like she was running entirely on adrenaline. She kept bouncing between topics rapidly, talking faster and faster, barely stopping to breathe. Then suddenly, she explained the storyteller's role in the wedding. Apparently, she would stand at the front of the aisle, wearing a long flowing white gown, while performing violin as guests arrived. Not simple violin music either. The bride wanted something soft, intricate, emotional, and impossibly beautiful. A performance so complex, people wouldn't believe only one person was playing. There was just one problem. She did not know how to play violin. At all. So naturally, she laughed awkwardly and explained that she had literally zero musical experience. That's when the bride casually responded, "Well, you have a year to learn." And honestly, that was the first moment the storyteller realized this might not be normal wedding stress anymore. Because she wasn't joking. Not even slightly. The bride started showing her notebooks full of wedding plans. And according to her, they looked completely unhinged. Pages filled with scribbles. Words circled over and over. Random phrases repeated in the margins endlessly. Stuff like, "Inspect what you expect," written repeatedly across entire pages. Then huge emotional descriptions of flowers, light, music, fabric textures, and energy. The page describing the violin performance was apparently almost unreadable. Her name written over and over. Beautiful, intricate, soft, concerto, guests crying, stuff scattered everywhere. At this point, the storyteller tried gently refusing again. She explained that even if she practiced non-stop for a year, she still wouldn't be remotely good enough for what the bride imagined. That's when things suddenly got intense. The bride slammed her hand on the table and sharply told her to stop talking, then immediately switched back to acting cheerful and excited like nothing happened, which honestly made the entire interaction feel even creepier, because it felt like her mood was flipping instantly. Then came the real bombshell. The bride casually revealed that she had already purchased a violin for her, a nearly $2,000 violin, without asking permission first. At that point, the storyteller completely panicked internally, because now it no longer felt like a weird request. It felt obsessive. The bride kept insisting that fate specifically chose her for this role. That she could feel it, that it had to be her. And every time the storyteller tried saying no, the bride simply ignored the refusal completely, almost like she physically couldn't process disagreement. Eventually the lunch ended, but the situation somehow kept getting worse afterward. Concerned, the storyteller decided to contact the fiancé privately. Not to create drama, just because she genuinely thought something felt mentally wrong. Before the fiancé could even respond, the bride somehow saw the message first and immediately exploded. She accused the storyteller of jealousy, of trying to sabotage the wedding, even implied she was trying to steal her fiancé, which made absolutely no sense. Then finally, the fiancé responded separately, and according to him, things had become a complete disaster behind the scenes. Apparently she'd already spent huge amounts of money they absolutely did not have, including student loan money and financial aid intended for school. She'd also been touring absurdly expensive wedding venues, like giant luxury castle properties in Texas. And when vendors told her certain requests weren't realistic, she completely lost control. At one florist shop, she apparently screamed so aggressively, police almost got called. Meanwhile, the fiancé was only now realizing how severe everything had become. And honestly, the scariest part of the story is that the bride genuinely seemed convinced. All of this made perfect sense. She didn't act embarrassed. She didn't question herself. She acted completely certain that everyone else simply didn't understand the vision, which is why so many people online thought She might actually experiencing some kind of manic episode. And honestly, that's what makes this story feel more unsettling than funny. Because at first it sounds ridiculous. A woman demanding somebody learn violin in a year. But the deeper the story goes, the more it feels like somebody genuinely losing touch with reality, while everyone around them slowly realizes something is seriously wrong. Honestly, this might be one of the weirdest wedding stories I've ever heard. Because it starts off sounding like normal bridezilla behavior, then slowly turns into something way more serious. And honestly, buying somebody a $2,000 violin before they even agree might be one of the biggest red flags imaginable. But what do you think? Was this just extreme wedding obsession? Or did it sound like she was genuinely having some kind of mental breakdown? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because there's plenty more coming.